For millions of people, tithing is presented as a rule. Give 10% or you're dishonest. But what if the numbers isn't a universal command? What if it came from a specific economic system, written for specific people, in a specific time? Today we're not debating faith. We're following the text, numbers, and context. This is coin and context, and this is what the Bible actually says about money and giving.
Instructions for giving? Well, the Bible says to give a tenth. Deuteronomy 28 says that. Give a tenth, a tithe of your increase. The word tithe, when you look it up in the Hebrew, means tenth. I had one pastor tell me, he says, well, I tell my people it's okay to tithe 5% when they're getting started. And I said, well, that's okay, but don't tell them to tithe 5% because that's mathematically impossible. You can't tenth the 20th. Just tell them to give an offering until they can get up to that point. I'm all about the grace on this stuff. I'm not a big rule keeper anymore. I like the rules because I kind of know what I'm supposed to be doing, but I'm not freaked out about the rules either. So I'm not going to try to tenth the 20th. It's a tenth. It's a tenth. That's 10%. Well, is it on the gross or on the net? You ever heard that one? This is hilarious. 2.7% of evangelical Christians tithe. Less than 3% of evangelical Christians tithe, and people ask me, gross or net? Who cares? None of you are doing it.
In modern churches, tithing often functions like a fixed financial obligation, a percentage-based rule, and a moral test tied to your income. But the Bible was written in agrarian economies, barter systems, tribal societies without salaries or bank accounts. So the first question we need to ask is simple. What did tithing originally mean economically? The word tithe literally means 1/10, which is 10%. In the Bible, tithing appears primarily in the Old Testament, and it was not a single universal payment. There was multiple tithes serving different purposes. The main Old Testament tithing, the Levitical tithe, was 10%. It was given to support the Levites, who are the religious workers, because they did not own land, and it was paid in crops and livestock and not money. The festival tithe was another 10%. This was used for religious festivals and communal worship, often consumed by the givers themselves. The poor tithe, another 10%, which was every third year, was for widows, orphans, and foreigners. When you add these together, many scholars estimate that ancient Israelites gave roughly 20 to 23% annually, and not the 10% that we know today. And crucially, this functioned like a tax system. It funded social welfare, religious life, and community stability. This was a national economic policy, not an optional charity.
God doesn't want 10% of your money. He wants 100% of your trust. Sheesh, that's a bar. People think tithing is like this taxable, like divine spiritual tax. They have this legalistic mindset that giving 10% or else you'll be cursed. God never wanted your wallet, guys. Do you know what he wants? Your heart. Because he's given us free will, he wants us to choose him. He can make money and spend it on himself. He cannot make a human being or force them to love him. Sheesh. Because that wouldn't be love, because love is not forced. You must choose to love God. Tithing, part of the Levitical priesthood and things like that, is all part of the Mosaic law, which we're not under anymore. It was like you had to pay a price in order to support people, but who paid the ultimate price? Jesus Christ, amen? No more temple tithing, no more church tithing, it's okay. And you don't have to tithe with money, guys. You can tithe with your body, you can tithe in your heart, you can choose to serve God with all of your heart, guys. It's not an obligation thing, it's an overflowing of love thing, different O's. Tithing is not about giving what you have in your wallet, but giving what you have in your heart. You guys understand what I'm saying here?
Here's the details that is often missed. The tithe was required of Israelites under Mosaic law. It was tied to land ownership. It was agricultural and not wage-based. Fishermen, craftsmen, and the landless poor were not always subjected to the same requirements. So already the idea of a flat 10% salary does not map cleanly onto the original system. In the New Testament, something major changes, which is critical. Jesus mentions tithing rarely. He criticized those who tithed precisely but neglected justice and mercy. After Jesus in the early church, there was no command to tithe 10%. Instead, giving is framed as a voluntarily proportional, and intentional form of giving. The most cited passage says each person should give what they have decided in their heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion. No percentage is named. The emphasis shifts from law to conscience.
Remember, salvation begins from the mind, it touches your heart, and then it touches your wallet. For me, the last is the wallet.
Today, most people earn salaries, wages, and digital income. Modern churches operate like a non-profit, institutions with budgets, staff, and buildings. Here's the tension. The Bible never sets a universal percentage for Christians, but modern institutions often do. That doesn't automatically make the modern giving wrong, but it does mean justification matters. 10% of a $30,000 a year income is $3,000. 10% of a $300,000 income is $30,000. A flat percentage doesn't affect everybody equally. Biblical giving repeatedly emphasizes ability, willingness, care for the poor, and avoiding coercion. So what's the truth then? The 10% tithe was real, very real, but contextual. It functions as a social economic system, not donation. Christians are not commanded to give a fixed percentage. The New Testament emphasizes generosity and not taxation. The real biblical question isn't, did you give 10% today? It is, did your money reflect justice, care, and responsibility?
Now let me tell you why I tithe. Number one, it provides for God's house. Number two, it tells God I trust Him. Number three, it creates margin in my life for God to fill. Number four, it reminds me that I am not my source. Number five, it connects my money to a kingdom purpose. Number six, it gives my job eternal significance. Number seven, it transforms my money into a seed. Number eight, it breaks greed and self-reliance off of my heart. And number nine, it lets everything else in my life know that God is first. Hear me. Tithing isn't an act of generosity. Let me say it again. Tithing is not an act of generosity. It's an act of obedience. For I am indebted to God because of His radical generosity towards me. And the least that I can do is be obedient with that which He has so freely entrusted me with. And I would venture to say that in the Church of Jesus Christ today, we don't have a money problem. We don't got a stock market problem. We don't got an economic problem. We don't got a Joe Biden Democrat problem. We don't got a Trump Republican problem. We have an obedience problem. And here's the reality. No, God will never need my money. He has streets paved with gold. He sits on a golden throne in front of a glassy sea. It is me who needs an open window of heaven over my life, which is activated by my obedience in giving my first and best to God.
Giving was never meant to be a spreadsheet. It was never meant to be a response. Understanding the numbers doesn't weaken faith, it strengthens honesty. This is Coin and Context HQ, explaining the money behind the moment.